All right, what are we looking at today, Randall?
Well, what we're going to look at is this concept for an alternate education system. And it would be built around some of the ideas we're going to look at right here. And part of the idea is to bridge the idealistic with the practical. Um, back in my day, there was a lot of attempts to create alternative communities, alternative living styles, and so forth. But there was a lot of naivety and lack of understanding about the practical dimensions of implementing a vision like that. But we've got a roughly half century now of experience that I think it's going to make it easier for us now to embark upon a program of creating alternate prototypes for basically educating people, getting people to start becoming smarter rather than dumber.
Yeah.
Because we've had a regrettable decline, I think, in overall intelligence in the last few generations, simply because we've allowed the all-powerful state to monopolize the system of education. And maybe what I'm hoping is that we will start moving in the direction of realizing that it's a failed system and we need to be exploring alternatives. And that's kind of what this is about.
How long have you been working on the vision for this?
Oh, maybe a decade or so.
Wow.
But it was born out of my experience organizing classes and coursework for both adults and young people. I did for 15 years. I organized courses and classes in geometry, mathematics, geology, other sciences like astronomy for the homeschool community, and found that it really opened my eyes to the possibilities for authentic education once you get out of this monopolistic system, which is basically a command and control system that artificially segregates children by age, not by interest and aptitude. It separates young people from the generation of their parents that preceded them. When I came of age, there was a term called, and it had never applied before my generation, which is the baby boomer generation, which was the generation gap. When I was coming of age and getting up to high school and college age, that was a fairly standard term that you heard frequently, was the generation gap, because there was an alienation between the generations that had sort of devolved, particularly since the end of World War II, when America began to consolidate all of its smaller self-controlling autonomous school districts into these mega school districts with the primary purpose of being able to control the curriculum. And so during the 50s primarily is when this began, and into the 60s, the federal government used federal highway money. Actually, was one of the things that they used as the big stick to get states to consolidate the smaller school districts into the mega districts, which then again the purpose was so they'd be much easier to control, because already at that point they're thinking about centralized authority and realizing that if you've got many small dispersed locally controlled autonomous school districts, you're not going to have the ability to control curriculum. And so what we've seen now since that time in the 50s and 60s is one big inflection point came in 79 with the creation of this giant federal bureaucracy, the Department of Education. And coincidentally, within the immediate aftermath of that, we begin to see a decline in educational standards that have gone down since then. And now we're turning out high school graduates that can barely read, can't do basic math, can't balance a checkbook. I mean, it's pathetic. And again, it's because what has happened is the whole process of education has become politicized. And so now the inculcation of values, which is what's supposed to be happening within the family and in the local community, is now being dictated by a central authoritarian state in Washington, and it's sending out all the rules and guidelines that have to then be followed by local school districts. So what's happening now is Really, it began during the 90s, the homeschool movement. And the centralizers, the authoritarians, don't like the homeschool movement because what it's doing is it's showing that for just a literal fraction of the cost, children are becoming much better educated. And it's also helping to keep families much more intact. There's a very distinct, discernible difference in the relationship between young people and their parents in families and so forth that haven't been split apart by the industrial education system, which is about basically turning out people who can function at the minimal level in society, pay their taxes, but not to think independently or think critically. That is not one of the goals of education anymore. And so we see the de-emphasis on things that would lead to one to have an aptitude for independent thought and critical thought. We're not teaching authentic history anymore. Now, there are good schools. There are exceptions. Yes, there are absolutely are exceptions. And but the problem is you have no competition. Mm-hmm. Essentially, it is a de facto monopoly. What that means is that the government has such a great control over curriculum, over funding of schools, that even private schools are still having to work under the onus of this standardized model. And if you want to be able to have students turn out that are recognized, you have to follow this standard model. So that's we've gotten ourselves into a mess, but there are alternatives on the horizon, and we're in a position now where we have incredible opportunities to create alternatives. See, I've said for years that if the government-run education system was all voluntary, it wouldn't exist more than a year or two. But right now, it's what keeps it going is it's funded through confiscatory taxation, mostly property taxes. Like, for example, here, we have no children in public education, but half of our property taxes right here in our property that we're sitting on right now goes to public education. So if I said, well, I think I don't like the values that are being inculcated by public education, I don't agree with the emphasis on on the woke curriculum and the DEI, all of that. If I don't feel like that's the proper role of school, which I believe it's more the proper role of the family, of the spiritual institutions to which they may belong, but it's not the government's role. Mm-hmm. That's not the government's role at all. So when you have an institution like the government doing something that it wasn't designed to do originally, it's like, it's not going to work effectively. So what we need to do is create alternatives and end confiscatory taxation, which is going to be hard to do, but it's one of the things that needs to happen, along with compulsory attendance laws. There are parents that can and have gone to jail because of the compulsory attendance laws. So what we got is a situation where, bureaucrats in the school districts are, penalizing parents and making it difficult for them to remove their children from the system. Although it varies considerably by state to state. Interestingly, a lot of the very liberal states have some of the most draconian attendance laws and make it the most difficult for parents to homeschool. So my personal opinion is, and people say, you're against education. No, it's because I'm 100% for education that I want the government and politics out of it. And once you release $100 billion roughly dollars that goes to support the vast bureaucracy of government-run education, and those resources go back to families and local communities and spiritual institutions and so on, we'll see a renaissance of education. I 100% believe that. Yeah. That we will see a renaissance in education once we get the giant bureaucracies out of it. Yeah. So undo the 1979 that Yeah, that
Yeah,
created the
the
Department of
DOE.
Education. Thank you. And that'd be a good place to start.
Yeah. Okay, what I see for this right now is you've shown me this presentation twice.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I saw it. And it was like, it was a holy shit moment, I guess you could say, because
Huh.
you had been telling me, hey, I've got this vision for a school, I've got this vision for how we educate people. I'd heard about your homeschooling experience as well, and then you showed me this, and I thought it was super impactful, and it was casual. We were just kind of on the phone running through it, and I want to share. I hope that we can share that experience with people, because there's a part of it where there's a lot of technical things that you've set up, how this school is going to be set up, the different curriculums in it, and the specifics of it. But it's also a vision that you want other people to help create and make possible. So I think welcoming people into this, showing them it how you kind of showed me is special, and I think people will see that. And it doesn't need to be overly formal. Obviously, we've got a bunch of people in here. For everybody who doesn't know, it's Trent, Rowan, Holden's also over here. So you're showing it to us and showing it to the world as well. So I hope that it's well received.
I think I can handle that.
I think
it's going to be a
too.
challenge.
Well, we got a bowl over here if you need it.
What do we got?
So we got a bowl over here.
A bowl? Well, we'll see how it goes. That may be my reward once we get done. In fact, probably will be.
Yeah. We'll watch a movie after this.
That's right.
Yeah.
About the gray.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the name that I've come up with for this, Kosmogonia, which is the original Greek. When you look into the etymology of the word cosmogony, it comes from Kosmogonia, which is two words brought together. Cosmo, which means the universe or the world. Gonia, which means to create. So it literally means world creation.
That's a great name.
Yeah, it means world creation. So that's kind of what I'm hoping the outcome of this will be, is that we're going to create a new world. Based not on dumbing people down, but by raising people's intelligence.
Beginning a new Renaissance period.
Yes, and that's what we need. So the grand vision is a prototype of the possible. And of course, as all prototypes, they're subject to modification, to improvement, to evolution. And so this is kind of a smorgasbord of ideas that I've just brought together. As it develops over the next few months, I think we'll bring into a more coherent presentation of the material. But for now, it is, just like I said, a smorgasbord of different things, talking about what would the curriculum be, what would the facility be like, etc. So we could just go ahead and get into that.
Jump into it.
And let's see, this was what I was calling it originally, the Sanctuary Project, before I really had a name for it, because I kind of felt like this, in a way, is sort of its function. And so if we look down below, we see the definition. This is the dictionary definition of sanctuary. A consecrated place is the first meaning. The second definition is a place of refuge and protection. Okay, and so now a consecrated place is a little bit vague. So what does consecrate mean? It means dedicated to a sacred purpose. It also means to make inviolable or venerable. Now, my idea is that I'm basically optimistic. I believe that the probabilities that we're going to avoid apocalypse and complete social breakdown I think that's going to prevail. However, when I get in my car and I drive out during the day, I don't necessarily assume I'm going to get into a cataclysmic action, but I still have the insurance. We have insurance on this house in case there's a fire. You take precautions. Like if we're building a house in the forest, we want to use a metal roof, right? We don't necessarily think that burning ashes from a forest fire is going to fall on our roof, set our house on fire, and burn it down. But we go the little bit of extra there to do a metal roof, because it's going to be much more invulnerable to a catastrophic fire like that. So the idea here is that a place of refuge or protection, and we know from history, the record of history itself, we can see repeated episodes of social breakdown. And how society manages to survive, how the continuum of knowledge endures, is because there are places of refuge. There are places of retreat, protection, where one can avoid the chaos that is going to prevail during these transitionary episodes. And we know that. I mean, we can go back, and I'm just looking today at some of the large number of social breakdowns that have followed in the wake of massive volcanic eruptions. If you go back to 1816, it was known as the year without a summer. We've talked about that. There was a series of volcanic eruptions that led up to it. And then you had a whole year where you basically in the northern hemisphere had virtually no summer. The result of that was widespread crop failure. And this, the widespread crop failures led to malnutrition, and you had famine, and you also had pestilence diseases that reduced the population. That event, the year of 1816, which has been called the year without a summer, has also been called the last great subsistence crisis of Western civilization, right? But it also affected China. It affected the southern hemisphere, although the northern hemisphere was probably the most dramatically impacted. Now, that Tambora eruption, if you look at all the volcanic eruptions of the Holocene, the last 11,600 years, the Tambora eruption was the 26th most severe. So there were 25 volcanic eruptions within the last 7 years, 11,000 years, that were more severe than the Tambora eruption of 1816 that led to the year without a summer. Now do the math. You know, what that means is that those kinds of events are a whole lot more numerous than anybody was even imagining a few decades ago. So I believe that is absolutely something we need to take into account, right? We've already seen with the pandemic and with the lockdowns and stuff that even an imaginary crisis can create social disruption. What would a real crisis do? See,
send us into complete chaos.
It could, yeah, for several years or more. I mean, some of these events that we're looking at in the last 10,000 years could cause, you know, not the extinction of the human race or anything like that, but it could cause social disruption. It might take a decade or two to recover from. And we're not even beginning to talk about what happens now, like with the sun, because here now we got another factor that we're realizing: the sun is a whole lot more variable than anybody had imagined. And so you have an intense solar storm. Yeah, we could have all of our electronics, all of these, the computers, everything disrupted, and it would take perhaps anywhere from 2, 3, up to 10 years, depending on the severity of the event, to rebuild the thing. So the idea is that there are these periods where you would have an interruption of the normal flow of social change and economics and all of that, and it's a very real possibility. Now, what do is you mitigate the effects of that by putting in place policies that, you know, basically will leave you less vulnerable. It's kind of like you remember the biblical story about was it Solomon, who they amassed 7 years of provisions.
Oh yeah, okay.
And then there was a great drought for 7 years.
Yeah.
And what happens is everybody else who wasn't prepared is now coming there, you know, looking for relief food, because they had taken the remedial efforts, made them remedial efforts to be prepared. So a big part of the whole thing is being prepared. So, okay, all of this is a roundabout way of saying that in this model, we've got a dual function. One is that we don't assume pessimistically that such a breakdown is inevitable. We recognize the possibility of such a thing. So we put in place policies associated with this enterprise that would minimize the vulnerability to social disruptions, whether they're caused by humans or whether they're caused by natural. Okay, so but normal times it's functioning as a like it says here in the next one, you'll see a place of retreat, a conference center, a school, even a village. So we have the first definition here, sanctuary, a consecrated place and also a place of refuge and protection in the case of social breakdown. And then consecrate means dedicated to a sacred purpose, but also to make inviolable or venerable.
Yeah.
This is a site I kind of like, Life Site News, and the guy who runs it, I forget his name, but he really kind of, I read this and I said, I'd already known this was a process underway. And I liked his take on it, so I used this quote because it seems to sum up the approach that I'm thinking about and how this effort could tie into a larger movement, a larger social movement. So our fundamental freedoms have top priority, and we cannot allow them to become constrained for the sake of the generations that follow us. As the freedom movement develops around the world, a variety of new solutions are rising that will enable people to take the power back. An international freedom movement is emerging that is building alternatives to established power structures and ways of living. People are choosing to leave densely populated areas and forming new communities where they can more effectively govern themselves. And this was Life Site News, November 19, 2021. And this movement is proceeding apace, and it is very much about, because I have very little confidence in the existing power structures. They're too tenuous. In fact, my interpretation of it is it's all a house of cards. And I think one small natural catastrophe, we would find out that, our dependence upon the centralized state would be a huge mistake. And, I'm very critical of Donald Trump and what he's doing, and I don't want to drag, partisan politics into this, but, from one perspective, maybe it's possible that because he's disrupting the status quo as much as he is, what he's doing is he's creating cracks in this edifice with his heavy-handed approach that we might be able to utilize and exploit to try to, it's like, to me, I think of cracks in the concrete and vegetation and flowers are growing up between those cracks. We've all seen that. And that's what I'm kind of hoping comes out of this. But again, I'm not going to get into that other than that I have a lot of criticisms of what he's doing and how he's doing it as much as what he's doing. But what he's doing is definitely shaking things up. But we won't get into that because we've got a lot to cover here. Originally calling it Cosmographia after the podcast that I was doing with Brad Young, but these were the functions that I saw this fulfilling. It would be a school primarily, also a research center, because there's a lot of interesting things coming down the pipeline on the scientific front, on the industrial front, on the technological front that could really go a long way towards helping us come up with systems that allow us to live in harmony with our environment. And towards that end, like I said, there's a lot of things on the horizon that need to be explored, but there's also a legacy, a very rich legacy from our past that I think we can learn a lot from. And we won't get into that too much here, but we're going to be talking big picture podcasts and Squaring the Circle podcast, where I begin to explore the various ways that I think ancient cultures were attempting to achieve optimum levels of integration with the natural world. So, school, research center, conference center, because in the world we live in now, which is now largely digital to some extent, it's still very important that we have interpersonal interactions amongst ourselves, just like we're sitting here now all of us together in this room having face-to-face discussions. That the digital realm and doing classes online is great. It's powerful. Having conferences where people from all over the world can join in, whether it's Zoom or Riverside or any of these technologies that we're using, it's great, it's powerful, but it's not a substitute for people actually gathering together, tribally, if you will,
Yeah.
and interacting on a person-to-person basis. I think you've been around enough to know that, yeah, they're two aspects of the same thing, but one is not the substitute for the other. The digital realm is allowing us to reach out and begin to build a worldwide community of like-minded people. People who are open-minded, people who love freedom, people who don't want to be subjugated to a draconian hierarchical system of society.
Yeah. Yeah, it's allowed us to create a global community, and it's going to keep allowing us to build deepening relationships with human beings, no matter where they are.
Now, I have been looking at properties for the last 3 or 4 years.
Where is this?
This is up in North Georgia.
Ah, okay. So near where we're
not
going.
far from here. Yeah, not
close to where we're going tomorrow.
There's beautiful properties up there, idealistic properties, and no property has everything. There's no 100% ideal property. Everyone has pros and cons, right? But several of the fundamental things that you would want, water. It's probably my priority when I look at a piece of property is what is the situation with water? Is there potable water? Access to the property is important if you want to get in and develop it. Is there any natural building materials like timber or stone or rammed earth that you can use, or clay, any of those kinds of things? If there's lime in limestone, that'd be part of the property survey as you look at that. You look at, is there enough flowing water, for example, to generate micro hydropower, which is really a valuable thing, I think, that's been developed over the last couple of decades. There's some really interesting systems. I think I've got a couple of them in here just to convey the idea. Just the topography, the grade. You have in the northern hemisphere, it's nice to have south-facing slopes. Why? Because you get that full sunlight. Now, on the other hand, you might like a north-facing slope if you want, because if you're in a southern climate, you're going to get very hot in the summer. So if you have something that's on the northern side, it's going to stay much cooler. Also, being able to, where I grew up and learned to build in Minnesota, everybody has basements. And I remember very well staying in the basement and fully underground, right? The full story is underground. And we didn't have air conditioning. We had heating for the winter, of course, but in the summer, very nice and cool. We didn't have air conditioning, but it's very comfortable. In fact, in the hot days, I would go down into the basement to sleep at night. I had a bed down there, and in the wintertime, it's much warmer down there as well. So being able to build underground is a valuable thing to be able to do. And a lot of people, particularly southern builders, don't have that much experience. I don't know how many times I've been contracted to repair basements that are flooded. Every time it rains, there's water, right?
Yeah.
So I know how to build basements that don't flood, how to build waterproof basements. So, it's these kind of things that go from the visionary realm into the practical realm.
Yeah, that's probably pretty important. Non-flooding basements.
I won't name any names, but there's a local architect. I think he's passed away now, so maybe I could name his names. But he designed a lot of really beautiful buildings, very stylistic and very, kind of avant-garde, but very impractical.
Yeah.
Roofs that leak constantly, things like that. So the challenge is how do you combine the beautiful with the practical? So that's one of the things that we would be looking at here. Now, the next one we're going to look at, this was a piece of property that was for sale a couple of years ago. And this was, as it says, Cloudland Brow. It's the Valley and Ridge province of Northwest Georgia. This particular property that was for sale it went from the ridge down onto the valley floor. So on the ridge, what you've got is these epic vistas. Like you can look here, this is looking to the east. So what you've got here is this is the ideal situation for establishing a horizon calendar, like our ancestors did. They would establish these amazing horizon calendars, and throughout the course of the year, the sun and the moon will rise at different positions on the horizon, right? And all part of their ceremony of integrating their individual consciousness with the cycles of the heavens and the seasons would be to have ceremonies where you're actually witnessing, for example, the winter solstice. When the sun is rising. So if we're facing east here, winter solstice would be on the right. Summer solstice would be on the left. So to the left is the north. And so you're throughout the course of the year, the point on the horizon where the sun would rise is going to shift back and forth. From this latitude, it's going to be almost 90 degrees. And the apex of that 90-degree angle would be from the viewpoint here. And then on the valley floor, you've got mainly layers of alluvium that's quite fertile. So you've got the potential for agriculture down on the valley floor. Plus you've got, because of the fact you've got this, you've got the escarpment here, there are a lot of springs, because you've got water moving through the bedrock. And then when it reaches the escarpment here, it issues forth from below ground, and so you get a lot of springs. So this is a really nice approach here, where you have...
This is a beautiful view.
Isn't that beautiful?
It looks like an AI image.
No, this is actually a photograph.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And you were looking at that 4 years ago? Something like that?
This was for sale maybe 2 to 3 years ago, I think. It sold.
Yeah.
As it says here, the property recently sold. It had many desirable attributes for the establishment of a school retreat / conference center.
So something where you can see the horizon, where you have a peak to look off of.
Yeah. This is the culmination of and goal of the sanctuary project is the creation of the Kosmogonia school. And the Pythagorean school, after, of course, Pythagoras, great quote from Manly Palmer Hall, Secret Teachings of All Ages. Pythagoras conceived mathematics to be the most sacred and exact of all the sciences and demanded of all who came to him to study a familiarity with arithmetic, music, astronomy, and geometry. He laid special emphasis upon the philosophic life as a prerequisite to wisdom. Pythagoras was one of the first teachers to establish a community wherein all the members were of mutual assistance to one another in the common attainment of the higher sciences.
I love that. He laid special emphasis upon the philosophic life as a prerequisite to wisdom.
Yeah. And the idea here in my mind is that, out of the school, what would naturally evolve is a community. And I would want anyone who participated in the school as a student, as a member of the faculty, as part of a staff, would all feel like they were part of that family.
Yeah.
And we'll get to this, but I think it's very important, and I've been really emphasizing this in some of the conferences and retreats that I've been doing lately. We held a sacred geometry retreat a few months ago, and I put out that if you wanted to bring your children to it, you're welcome. And so we did. We had some parents that brought their adolescent and teenage children that participated in. And I have found that when I was organizing classes for the homeschoolers back, say between about 1995 and 2010, I think is the range that I was doing that. What I did was I rented a room, an unused room in a church, a local church, that had a kind of declining congregation, and I went in there, and they liked to have the extra income, so I rented this room, and for about 10 years I did that until they got a new pastor. The new pastor decided it was time to grow the congregation, and then for a year I was sharing my classroom with the Sunday school group.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized how that really I would come in like Monday after the Sunday school, and it had been like a gang of barbarians had been in the, kindergarten age barbarians.
It was just messy. It not put together well.
Well, see, we would have projects that we'd be working on, and I would do, we'd start say a mathematical. Let's say here's how we derive a quadratic equation. So we're doing that up on the board, and then I would leave that, and I say, okay, this is Tuesday. Okay, on Thursday when we have class, we'll continue with this. So I want everybody to review this. Then Thursday would come and it's gone. It's all erased, and all my whiteboard markers are smashed. The felt tips are smashed in. There's scribbling all over the whiteboards. And it finally got to the point where I said, I got to find another place.
Yeah.
And I did for a few years. That worked well. But that was the one of the main reasons I quit. Quit doing that was because I didn't have a good place to hold classes. Also, my business started accelerating. And, what happened was we got up to about 2010, and I was feeling the effects of the real estate market collapse. So I had to devote all my time pretty much to keeping my business from going bankrupt, basically. So that was when I quit this. But I loved doing it. I bonded with these kids. It was great. I had maybe 120 kids come through my classes. We'll be getting to, we've got a little more section on that, so we'll talk about that. Let's see here. Where am I at here? Okay. Now, I have no discrimination against anybody according to, their race, their gender, their orientation. None of that to me matters. What matters to me is their mindset. Mm-hmm. I don't care what you are. I like being around people of diverse backgrounds and diverse interests, but to me, these things right here are fundamental. A spiritual outlook on life. And I have found as an employer that when I was selective about where a person's philosophical orientation was, it certainly improved everything. Okay, creative intelligence. Okay, and okay, you guys are in this room. I think that all of us in this room have these types of attributes in your personality. A strong work ethic with an entrepreneurial spirit. You don't want to just sit around and loaf. I mean, look, we got one day a week we're supposed to do that. Just sit back, take it easy. But the rest of the time, hey, let's do something. And if it's we're doing something creative, not routine, like, say the exact opposite of my response, my emotional and intellectual and psychological response, for example, when I was working in a box factory. Mm-hmm. That was like standing in front of a machine, folded boxes coming out, and then there would be 100 of them, and then I'd have to strap them up and put them on a conveyor belt, and then do that all day. Mind-numbing, yes. I toughed it out, though, for a few months.
That's the strong work ethic right there.
Toughed it out. Well, I needed a grub stake, so I saved my money, and then after a couple of months, I said, I got to go. I got to move on, and I kind of started my own thing.
Yeah.
That's what I did. Free thinkers, lovers of freedom. Absolutely. Prerequisite. Moderate and healthy habits and lifestyle. You don't want to be indulging in everything all the time, but at the same time, don't be so strict that you can't do anything ever, right? Hey, if you want to smoke a cigar now and then, like I used to do every Thanksgiving when I got together with my ex-brother-in-law, who had a Cuban wife, and he would come with these Cuban cigars. I'd go, okay, I can smoke a Cuban cigar. Or, eating reasonably good, not a lot of junk food. I don't like cigarette addicts as a rule. That contributed to my dad dying at 66 years old. So I kind of have this emotional, I do not look upon cigarette smoking in a detached manner, because I watched my dad die of cancer. But, that's the key. Moderate and healthy habits and lifestyle. I choose not to smoke cigarettes, but if I was going to, roll up for a ceremonial purpose, using tobacco in the ceremony,
Yeah.
sure. So I think it's pretty obvious what we mean by moderate and healthy habits and lifestyle. Not overly strict, meaning, in other words, hey, you want to drink a beer now and then? No problem.
Yeah,
you don't need to be drinking 2 6-packs every day.
Yeah, balanced people.
Balanced people. That's the key.
Yeah.
Balanced people. And then a commitment to the great work. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, so in the next slide, I define that. Let's see if I can get this to work.
If you want to use these.
Yeah, I think that would be better. Yeah. Okay, so defining the great work. Among many archaic cultures and civilizations, there is a widespread belief that human life on Earth has a very specific and special purpose within the order of nature. That there is a meaning to human existence and a divine plan that must be fulfilled. The precise manifestation of this purpose can vary from time to time and from place to place. Sometimes it might only be expressed philosophically. At other times, it might be manifest as a glorious campaign of sacred building. The great work can encompass art, architecture, science, literature, education, and spiritual practice, and it can apply to an individual, a civilization, or a planet. But in whatever form it may manifest, it is always a matter of transmutation. That's the great work, essentially. As I've derived the meaning from studying, Hermetic wisdom, Kabbalistic wisdom, the mystery traditions of the ages, all of these things, the great spiritual traditions, this is a common theme, that there is a meaning and a purpose to us being here. And part of the challenge is understanding what that is. And from time to time, I think always there are certain individuals who do, in the process of becoming, if you want to call it, enlightened, part of that enlightenment is realizing the purpose of human life on Earth and within the larger framework of the cosmos, because ultimately we are the end product of a whole complex system of cosmic influences that have to come together in just precisely the right proportions in order for us to sit here and have this existence, right? At other times, you do find whole societies, and the most recent one that I might invoke would be the great cathedral building era, which is almost miraculous when you begin to look at it.
Yeah, I think part of the great work is understanding that you are a very, very small, relatively insignificant piece of a larger picture.
Yes.
But at the other side of it, realizing that you are that bigger picture and everyone is. So it's a combination of, kind of committing to faith or some type of pursuit of something beyond just what you can extract from it.
Faith, that's an interesting concept, faith. I have faith. But I don't have faith in dogmas.
Right, dogmas.
I have faith that there is meaning and purpose to existence. I have faith in the power of human reason because I believe that God endowed humans with reason. And that's the most powerful tool we have for interacting with creation, with the world. So I have faith in those things, but I do not have faith in dogmas. Don't come and tell me I have to have faith in this or that because somebody once said it or somebody once wrote it. No, I will certainly consider it and look at it, study it, and come to my own conclusions because I have faith in my own reasoning power.
Love that.
Good.
I think great work is an idea of that. When you talk about great work, it's not that you can particularly say this is exactly what every instance of great work is.
Yeah,
you have to believe.
That's why, like I'm showing, it encompasses all of these things.
Yeah.
The following slide shows a concept for the main entrance into the campus. So we'll just start with that. Okay, you're coming up to this, let's say it's been 10 years, we've developed it, there's an infrastructure in place, you're coming to attend an event. The following slide shows a concept for the main entrance into the campus. It is built in a rustic style of architecture using natural stone, wood, timber, and glazing to set the mood and to convey a feeling of being removed from a typical urban area. The Adirondack style harkens back to the early 20th century and construction of the many great public and private lodge buildings in America, and would be appropriate. Oops, wood, that's not supposed to be W-O-O-D, that's supposed to be W-O-U-L-D. All right, typo, I'll fix it later. Private lodge buildings in America and would be appropriate for a woodland setting. So if we built something, created a campus in the east where there's a lot of forests and things, this would be an appropriate style. A covered portico would be an essential because it provides unloading and loading in inclement weather. You want to be able to pull up a place, get out your equipment, your instruments, your luggage, all of that, and not get rained on. Okay, so the main building would house a lodge and a restaurant with a reception area and some offices. Zoning will be important in the design and layout of the campus. All public access to the campus grounds would be through a single entrance providing access to the outer zone. Zoning is important. The entrance would be gated as it would be important to have a controlled entry. Other access roads providing ingress or egress would be for staff use or emergency use. As part of the outer publicly accessible zone would be a variety of shops, public access facilities, selling crafts, produce, a bookstore, gift shop, a visitor center, etc. This part of the complex would form the village. And this is, I've actually looked into the legalities of incorporating as a village. And there are some very useful things that, for example, you can have your own police force. Which
Education centers probably don't allow that.
Why wouldn't they? Well, no, but so
as a incorporation.
Well, so that would be part of the zoning. So in other words, you would have part of it would incorporate as a village, and then the school itself would probably be run. I got now the nonprofit status for establishing a school, and so that would be an independent legal entity from an incorporated village.
Got it.
Right. Beyond this area would be a more restricted domain accessible to faculty, staff, students, and tour groups. Here's where most of the infrastructure would be located. It's important, I think, to have this zoning because you don't want the public to be able to come in. You want to have some ability to vet the public coming in. I've seen, over the years, I've attended so many conferences, both as a presenter, as an attendee. I visited retreat centers, conference centers. I realized somewhere along the line that, having controlled access is really important. So that's easily accomplished for the most part. And so this is an example of the Adirondack style. And, this is stone, wood. I don't like the shingled roof. We would not have that. We would have a standing seam metal roof for the reasons I talked about earlier. But it would still be in this same style. And this is, I don't know where I found this, but when I was looking online for something that I thought could represent a building in the Adirondack style, and I saw this and I thought, well, this is perfect. If you've got the covered entryway there, and assuming you have access, over here, this is where you could load and unload. You would probably have a restaurant. You might have lodge rooms in here that people could rent. And then you'd have a controlled area inside here that would be set up as a village. And people could come in and shop, do this, because one of the things we'll talk about is how do we basically pay the bills for a place like this. So, obviously you're going to have retreats and conferences, but I think cottage industry would be a very important part of it. I'll give some examples. When I've been teaching sacred geometry workshops for 30 years, and I've had hundreds of people come through these, and I've always, like the most recent one I did, we promoted it as sacred geometry for a practical person. If you're a designer, a builder, an architect, a carpenter, you're into crafts, if you're a furniture builder, like this table, I designed this using sacred geometry, right? So we built this in our shop. You saw when we ate at the Wheelhouse Pub today, you saw doors that we had built in the shop, right? Now, as much as possible, we had a given building we were working with, but as much as possible, I tried to incorporate some geometry, harmonious geometry into the design.
Yeah.
Right. And even though you don't necessarily walk in and go, oh, okay, look, there's a root 3 proportion. You walk in and you kind of get the sense of comfort and harmony. That's, I met this guy last night who he's a dog trainer and a friend of Ian's when I went in there last night and saw Ian, and he was just going on about, he says, first time I came in here, he said, I knew I was going to be a regular. And he's been a regular since and become good friends with Ian, the owner. And so, he said it just had such a inviting feeling. I just felt good when I walked in. I thought that's exactly what the goal was, to get that
harmonious.
Yeah. And I remember talking with Ian as we were looking at the old building, what could we do with it? I said, well, whatever we do with it, I want to try to create a place here that people really get a sense that they are welcome when they come in. They're very comfortable, they're relaxed, and they have a sense of harmony. And I think we accomplished that to some extent.
It feels like it when we're there. Food's damn good too.
Yeah, the food is good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay, this is going me backwards. All right. So see, these were some of and by no means a comprehensive list, but over the years I've read and studied these and drawn inspiration from, Thomas Jefferson, enlightened republicanism, Frank Lloyd Wright, organic architecture, and his model of the Taliesin Fellowship. Are you familiar with that at all, Trent? The Taliesin Fellowship? Very, very great prototype. One quick story about that. This was his Taliesin East, which is built on the banks of the beautiful Wisconsin River in the driftless area of Wisconsin. He inherited that property, had been in his family, and he developed this school there of organic architecture. And it very was much autonomous. They had farming there. They had, they would grow their own food. They had cottage industries. All the people that came there to study architecture under him also learned hands-on building. I've got many books about Frank Lloyd Wright's architecture, and in the books about Taliesin, it talks about how during the Great Depression, when there's impoverishment all over the country, people are out of work. At Taliesin, they barely even felt it. They had created a little sort of a cultural enclave, an agricultural enclave there, and I got the same story. I remember when my father-in-law was from North Dakota, and during the Great Depression, there was some very distinct differences, let's say, between the Dakotas and, for example, Oklahoma. Out there in the Great Plains states, the southern Great Plains states, which included the panhandle of Texas, Kansas, Oklahoma. You've probably heard about the Great Migration of the 30s, the Okies. There was a famous novel, Grapes of Wrath. Written about that. Have you read that?
I have read the Grapes of Wrath. Yeah.
Really? Okay, that's okay. So that was very real. We're gonna do a podcast about that. What happened then? Because it's very interesting in that you had this kind of dual mutual feedback thing happening between the environment and the economy, and the drought in the environment was reflected into the drought in the economy. And there are reasons for that. But getting back to my father-in-law, they had a community up in North Dakota near Fargo. They already had trade networks. All the farmers traded with each other. One farmer maybe had chickens and they would have eggs. The other might have beef cattle. Another one, might have growing a particular type of crops. I remember him telling me, we barely noticed the depression. We felt it, but we were pretty comfortable because we already had in place these networks that weren't affected by the larger economy as a whole. Now, by contrast, go down to, Oklahoma, Kansas, panhandle of Texas. You had government policies that encouraged people to go out into the great natural grasslands that had prevailed since the end of the Great Ice Age, prairie grass that was 6-8 feet high, that held the topsoil in place. Because if you look at the environmental history of the Great Plains, you discover that there, like every century or so, there will be a period where you might have 6, 8, 10 years of drought. But you had an ecosystem that had become established that could withstand that drought. So now you have World War I, and there were agricultural collapses in Europe. And so that created a huge market for grain. So the government began to subsidize farmers to go out, get this land and plant wheat and grow wheat, right? So they cut down the prairie grass, they plowed up the ground, and they planted wheat, right? And then the government gave them a guaranteed rate per bushel of wheat, right? So you had this huge migration into the lower southern plains. In addition to that, government agents went out acting on behalf of the mechanization, the John Deere tractors and things, convincing these farmers now. When all this started, like in the 19 teens and the 20s, there was plenty of rainfall. So you had these bumper harvests, right? Everybody's making money. Then they went in and talked them into going mechanizing. So they bought tractors, they bought plows, they bought equipment, and then they were able to plow up even more of the prairie, right? Well, now 29 comes 30 and starts a 10-year drought. So what happened is that in the drought, the soil that had been now plowed up dried out. And then the winds came. And you had these massive dust storms where it turned day into night. Dust was falling like on the streets, accumulating on the streets of Washington, D.C., that far to the east, right? So it was a whole different set of influences and effects with those southern the southern farms there. And what happened? You had thousands and thousands of people go belly up. We're going to tell that whole story on one of our big picture episodes because it's a powerful story, it's a dramatic story, and it has many lessons to be derived from it. Whereas, like my father-in-law, where they didn't have any of that influence, they came through pretty well, actually. So what you see there is what happened in nature was exacerbated by policy, right? Short-sighted policy.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a whole lot more to talk about there. Anyways, Frank Lloyd Wright, Organic Architecture, Taliesin Fellowship. Taliesin had this sort of immunity to a lot of the worst effects of the Great Depression. Buckminster Fuller, Synergetics. Coming up, I'll show you a slide where we were building one of Buckminster Fuller's geodesic domes for a spiritual retreat in the North Woods of Minnesota. We'll see that shortly. John Michel, Ancient Cosmology, Sacred Geometry. Keith Critchlow, I had the privilege of studying directly with him, Sacred Architecture and Perennial Wisdom. Andrew Jackson Downing, he was a forerunner of Frank Lloyd Wright. He was one of the ones who developed ideas about the harmony of landscape and architecture. Gustav Stickley, he was the founder of the arts and crafts movement. And it was kind of a sort of a reaction to the over-industrialization of the 19th century, when he felt like, there was something being lost, which there was, and so he was trying to get people back to, the arts and crafts, building things with your hands, making furniture. I was going to mention earlier that in one of my ongoing courses that I was doing on sacred geometry, I had a woman who was a quilter. And she came in and she was taking what we learned from sacred geometry and making these beautiful sacred geometry quilts that she was selling. And I had another guy in one of my classes, a guy who had a hobby of doing stained glass windows.
Yeah.
He eventually took what he learned and he went full-time, quit his job and went full-time stained glass windows. Now, that's an example of, to me, what cottage industry could have evolved into, right? So people coming in, let's say to the village, you have a shop there, you go in and you've got these beautiful sacred geometry quilts, you know, or you have whatever, it could be, you know, furniture, any number of things, you know, limited only by your imagination. So an important part of the campus would be the shop facilities where things like that could be produced.
Yeah, I don't want to derail this too much, but what is how important do you think beauty is?
Beauty?
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. It's absolutely important. And I think the idea is that that harmony and beauty go hand in hand. You effectively don't have one without the other.
Yeah.
Now, I look the exact opposite when I look at like brutalist architecture, just this barren concrete. And, you know, look, I love concrete. Concrete is plastic, it's moldable. You can do all kinds of cool things with concrete. But let's do beautiful things with it. Let's do, you know,
A Parthenon in Nashville.
Yeah,
Instead of
exactly.
just a bunch of blocks.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, anyways, that was Gustav Stickley. You know, people can look. I'm sure you can see any of these guys online. Christopher Alexander. He wrote some interesting books called it The Pattern Language and the Timeless Way of Building. So I studied his work in the 70s and the 80s. I have a number of his books right over there on my shelf, along with Andrew Jackson Downing, Gustav Stickley. Bill Mollison, he was kind of the main leader in the permaculture movement from the 70s and the 80s. I love the concept of permaculture. It's very much in mimic of how nature itself works. You know, if you look at the spectrum of agriculture and the growing environment, you have monoculture on one end of the continuum and permaculture on the other end, right? So monocultures, you have, well, that's what they were doing during the Depression when they plowed up millions of acres of grassland and planted wheat, right? Whereas a diverse culture, which mimics the way nature works, is much more invulnerable to changes, because with the monoculture, it can proliferate and prosper during a specific set of environmental conditions. If that changes, then it becomes very challenging. Monoculture becomes much more difficult, right? And we saw that again going back to the Great Depression. That was one of the lessons from that. You know, when there was plenty of rainfall over those southern plains, yeah, you could grow wheat. But then as soon as the environment changed, that was it. The crops just died in the field because they didn't have water. Yeah. And then the topsoil blew away. Millions and millions of tons of topsoil blew away. And there are still places you can go down there where the recovery is not complete.
Yeah. I mean, and we're doing a lot of monoculture farming again.
Yeah.
If you go to the Western Plains.
Right. Now, there is a place for some monoculture. I'm not saying we have to do away with all monoculture. Absolutely.
Yeah, it feeds a
but
lot
we're
of
100
people.
If we're 100% dependent upon it, a change of conditions could create real challenges.
Yeah, and in a community like this, you don't really need monoculture because you're not trying to feed 1 billion people or 200 million people.
Now, I would like to see, in suburbia, you've got all of these beautiful manicured lawns. Hey, take 50% of that and plant some food crops, right?
Everybody'd eat.
Yeah. John and Nancy Todd, New Alchemy, Polyculture, which is kind of a variant of permaculture, but they did a lot of really interesting work. Again, I've got in my library over there, I've got books by them. Gerard O'Neill, Space Colonization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
O'Neill cylinders.
There's a place for that. Gurdjieff. You ever heard of Gurdjieff? Forest philosophers?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so we're not going to get into any of these in depth, other than anybody who's seeing this that wants to can look these influences up online. Rowan and I have built several houses now that were inspired by Andrew Jackson Downing. Harmony of Landscape and Architecture. And then Swami Rama, Yoga, Meditation, and Shakti. Sri Aurobindo, who was another great spiritual teacher from India in the early 20th century, who wrote about the evolution of the supermind. how we could tap into it using ancient methods. And he taught that our life in this incarnation on this planet is very important for a higher purpose. And don't turn our back on it. Instead, what we want to do is we want to raise the vibratory level of the world and creation. So that was what he taught. And I studied his work way back in the 70s and was very much inspired by it.
Hermetic philosophy.
Now, what I've done here, thinking big. The next slide presents the various, have you ever thought of thinking big? Does this, like the big picture?
Yeah, I know.
So the next slide presents the various components of an idealized campus infrastructure, a grand vision of what could evolve over the long term. The strategy would be to launch the project by creating those facilities that are needed at the outset to generate revenue at the earliest practical date. So you don't want to go years. You want to be able to pretty much within a year have income producing activities and events. Revenue stream must be sufficient to provide the resources necessary to grow the school in a manner calculated to promote return on the initial investment while also providing funds sufficient to maintain a program of further development and expansion. A prioritized program of development is suggested.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of throw this in here too. When you're talking about the revenue stream as well, like a lot of this will start to hopefully be backed up by digital ways that people can get involved.
Yes, of course. That's the dual component of this thing, right? So the philosophical idea behind this project is the creation of an infrastructure complex that is unique, inspiring, and one of a kind, achieved by incorporating ancient universal principles of harmonic design, adapted and updated to a 21st century incarnation. By aligning it with a profound and revered tradition with roots deep into the prehistoric past, the Kosmogonia school will be set apart from any other. Also, very important, access to awe-inspiring natural features and the outdoors is key to the concept. And the slides following are intended to convey an impression of what could evolve over time as the school/community grows and expands.
I have a question if I can.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I keep the personal side short, but I've always wanted to have like a homestead. Like, so just hearing this is incredible. Have you thought about the possibility of, I don't know, maybe friends, family, whoever that can build, like maybe add land to it and also be a part of the community and build their
Absolutely. That's an integral part of the concept, is that, like the piece of property that we looked at with Rob Reinhardt a few weeks ago, 341 acres. The idea is to partition the property for various uses. You might take like 40 acres of that, 50 acres, 60 acres that you set aside for exactly what you're talking about. Those could be privately owned. The primary criteria, though, would be that the owners would have some affiliation or involvement, right? Not just willy-nilly somebody comes in and, it has to be part of the effort. Right, yeah. And then there would naturally be a community that would grow around that. So imagine that you're doing your homestead. You've got, how many acres are you thinking? 1 to 5, somewhere in that range? Probably, I know that typically a good homestead, oftentimes 5 acres is considered more than ample, right? But imagine you've got a couple of dozen neighbors and
they've all got 5 acres.
Right. And you're kind of diversified. So automatically, naturally, you're going to be trading among, just like when we were growing up, when Ron and I were growing up in rural Minnesota, we could get our eggs from the farm down the road. Forester's Meats was just another piece of property over. We could get all meat and steaks from there. The produce from the gardens. And of course, we had my mother planted a huge big garden. So yeah, and that's really how it should be. So absolutely, the answer to your question is yes, and yes again.
Amazing.
Okay. So these is sort of the grand vision here. These would be all the things we'd be looking at. So Down the left side, you see we've got some private housing, right?
Yeah.
So there's your, and these are sort of roughly, organized according to function, but, of course it's all going to be different. But
Depending on the property.
you could have a large community garden space, right? Community gardens work, There's several of them around here that have been operational for years. In fact, there's a community garden 1 block over. There's a vacant lot, and whoever owns it said to the people living on the street, hey, use it for a garden. I think it's been a community garden since we've been here for 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you ever use it? Do you ever get?
No.
Oh, okay. Other people. In the
Rowan
neighborhood.
attempted at one point to. Rowan might give a report on his attempts to plant a garden.
I'll take the soft chuckle as you have a black thumb.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember what it was. The squirrels, the birds, it was like a constant babble.
Yeah.
And I think at the end he finally gave up.
Oh,
He was
no.
defeated by the squirrels.
The squirrels beat Rowan. I'll make sure to hold that over his head in the future.
Okay, so down at the bottom, I'm just saying, there's your road coming in. The first thing there is your lodge and your restaurant. And then you got a greenhouse, and maybe the greenhouse would be supplying food to the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Or, the garden space would be providing food to the restaurant. Fresh farm to table, right there. A couple of 100 yards away, you got the garden space going right over to the lodge and restaurant. Then you've got a building that would house maybe your auditorium, classrooms, studio, and film production, right? Maybe under one roof. To the left there, you've got a maintenance shed. That would be very important. You've got to maintain the buildings, the infrastructure. You're building new things all the time, so you need to have a maintenance shed. Then just above that, you've got a shop. Now, that would be different than the maintenance shed. But the shop would be where, you might, in the shop, you might be building conference
like
tables
this,
and
yeah.
selling them. You might be, it could be for, yes, you have,
Or if you can almost provide a live, work, play environment, and so if the shop is big enough for people to produce their own product
yeah.
right there without leaving the property.
Yes. And in fact, not far from here, there is a facility very much like that where you go in and you can rent your own space, but they've got a collective area where they have they have like woodworking equipment. They have, computers where you can do digital stuff, of course, in a separate room. You don't want that in the same room as the, where you're creating sawdust and stuff. But yeah, there's a place probably less than a mile from here that's set up like that. So you've got tools in there. You can go in and you become a member. You get your own space in there, but then you have access to all these collectively owned tools or tools owned. I think they're just collectively owned. Then, so the shop, then above that, you've got power generation, which, we can talk, we definitely need to break that down and look at it. We've talked about numbers of things there that could be how we would generate power for the complex. We won't get into that in detail now, but that's.
I mean, you've got a lot of ideas for.
Oh yeah, and research. Julie, is a master electrician. I mean, we've looked into all kinds of things from when we were kids, we did a development on 8 acres of northern Minnesota, and what did we use? We used propane there, right? Didn't we? Yeah. They would come out once a year and they'd fill our propane tank. A lot of the houses, I remember in one of my grandparents' house, they had just fuel. They had a tank in the basement, and the guy would come out with a truck and he'd put the hose through a little window in the basement wall into the tank and fill it up with fuel oil once a year, right? But there's there's a place for solar, there's a place for wind. We don't want to be dependent on solar and wind, but there is a place for solar and a place for wind.
And of course, if there is any clearing of property to be done, not only could you have the sawmill set up to produce lumber for the construction, but some of it could be used in wood-burning fireplaces.
Sure. Then you look to the right of there, that would be the library. And I've got the core of the library already. I mean, this is 1/3 of the books that would be in the library here. And in my other room, I have all of our books that we've collected together with practical skills. You know, everything you would need to build a house, everything you would need to install, an independent power generation system. I've got a whole library of how-to books, how to do things and get me right. That's in the other room. You haven't seen it. Then to the right of the library, we have a gymnasium. Right? Gymnasiums are great.
Oh yeah,
and
good for recreation.
And
good
we're
competition.
gonna have young people there. So we want facilities for young people. Down below, I've told Mike, hey man, we'll give you a how-to headquarters. So he says, okay, well he'll probably move from Oregon
down to
Tennessee or wherever.
Yeah.
And then will there be space for audience generator?
For Titan.
For a what?
For us.
Now.
Well, yes. I think we have to, yes.
That require a little bit of thought.
Yeah.
If you'll allow it.
Yeah.
We'll be in
Well,
and
see,
out.
listen, no, I think that would be excellent to have like you guys there, HowTube there, and actually that could be sort of your headquarters. And then you walk out the door of your corporate headquarters and here's all this at your fingertips. Yeah. Then, of course, above the gymnasium, spa, clinic, rejuvenation and healing, because there's so many new things coming on the front of rejuvenation and healing and all of that. And I have a friend, Dr. Wishman, who I've told you about, haven't I? The Advanced Rejuvenation Clinic.
Yeah.
So there'd be all kinds of interesting things we could do there because we want people come out to participate in a retreat or a conference. Like I say in one of the earlier slides, the idea is that it would be a completely regenerative and immersive experience. Above that, a meditation temple or chapel with a very special quality to it, where you maybe, you have to take your shoes off. You don't talk when you're in it, and it's built with very special geometry so that as soon as you walk in, you're feeling elevated and inspired and so on. So that would be a very special place where we really try to get some harmonious geometry to it. And then spring or creek-fed pond with aquaculture, an astronomical observatory, and a planetarium. Planetarium would probably be a little bit further down the road. Coming up, I've got some information on both of those, so we'll come to that. Then, okay, so where do people stay when they come for events? Well, for the lower economic, like when I was young and attending things and didn't have a lot of money, hey, I was perfectly happy to stay in a dormitory or a bunkhouse, right? I've stayed in bunkhouses with Buddy when we were traveling, 4 or 5 of us guys. We come in and it's like $30 a night. You don't get much. You got a bathroom typically, and you have literally bunks, and they'll give you your blanket and pillow and you go out there and there's no frills, but hey, can get a good night's sleep. So a bunkhouse would be great, a dormitory type setup. Then you'd have cabins of various, they could be very primitive cabins or something even very deluxe. For if you've got somebody who's coming and want to spend $400 or $500 a night, you got a cabin for them. If somebody wants to spend $100 a night, you got a cabin for them. And then you have campsites. When I did 8 days in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains with Keith Critchlow, they had some really deluxe accommodations there. Shortly you'll see some pictures of their facility. But me and my 2 buddies that went out there together, we just camped. We pitched a tent and they had campsites set up. Short way from where our camp was, there was an outdoor bathroom and there was a pump where we could get water. That's basically all we needed.
Yeah, that's a nice campsite.
Yeah.
RV
hookups, yeah. Teepees, tree houses, yurts, anything that's cool and unusual and different would be part of the plan. A shooting range, an archery range.
Have you seen, side note, have you seen the development? It's like in the desert of, I want to say Arizona or Utah. No, it's in the, I don't remember exactly, but it's called Project X.
I don't recall seeing that.
Essentially what he's done, the guy who's built it, is just built all of these crazy different types of structures and houses in the middle of a playa, of the middle of a desert, essentially. I'll show you some pictures of it, but there might be some inspiration there for the.
It's not in New Mexico, is it?
I don't.
Now there is
so.
a place. There is a place that I've seen, very near the Rio Grande River.
Okay.
That what is it called again? Earthship.
Earthship. No,
I think
don't
that's
think
it.
That's it.
And then another interesting place I visited a couple of times is Arco Santi, which is a very interesting alternative way to approach the problem of urbanization.
Huh. Okay, I'll have to I'll look into both of those. And
Okay.
I can find the name of this here in a second. Cannot remember his name. No, but. Yeah,
And
I'll
then
pull it up.
the other thing, this big oval here, agriculture, food crops, fruit trees, berries, etc. This is stuff that could be planted and cultivated all throughout the whole, so you would leave a large section. Let's go back to I'd say 200 to 350 acres, in that range. So you would have an area, the majority of the property would essentially be uncultivated. It would be left natural, except it could be it could turn into an evolving permaculture system. Why couldn't you have in a clearing fruit trees growing, right? Food crops growing. You could integrate that very nicely with just forested area. If you've got some pasture land, if you've got meadow land, whatever, and then in a lot of that area you would have hiking trails. Things like that.
Yeah.
So the idea, let's say take 300 acres. So you allow, say 30, 40 acres for the village, 30, 40, 50 acres for private home sites and homesteads. And then you allow, say 50 acres for the development of the campus. And then everything else remains undeveloped.
Yeah. And the rest of it is integrated harmoniously with the environment.
Yes.
Yeah. But the place is called Outpost X, and it's in Utah.
Okay. I've never heard of it.
They've been doing developments like, just crazy houses and stuff in here.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Some people might want to develop their own special style of yurt.
Sure.
There you go.
I think we covered everything. Let's keep going then. So what's the minimum infrastructure necessary to begin monetizing the project at the earliest date? Possible implementation strategy depending on initial site conditions and existing infrastructure, if any. First of all, you got to have access, so roads and access. Preliminary phase of water management and waste disposal. Those are probably two of the very most important. And then you'd build a couple of multi-purpose buildings. One would be your shop, because you're going to need that, because the idea is that you would, as much as possible, the building of the site would be part of the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Which again, I learned that from Frank Lloyd Wright. All of his students built Taliesin East. They built Taliesin West.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they learned, by hands-on. And and so I would see the same thing. And you'll see here coming up, I've come up with a system of a prefab modular architectural system. So where you could prefabricate, say, 10 to 12 different components in a shop that would then be carried out to the site and assembled in an infinite number of different ways to achieve a huge, unlimited variety of structures. And it's all based on sacred geometry.
That's so cool.
And then lodging. Well, the simplest thing is going to be your campus and RV hookups. Then a bunkhouse initially would provide accommodation for crews and workers. And then cabins, initially 2 or 3, later 6 to 10 units. A motel type structure with conjoined units. The conjoined units allow economies of building. A lodge building with rooms. again, as much as possible, everything would be modular design. Oops, where was I?
You can go back one more.
Yeah, initially, as much as possible, modular design, which makes it easy to expand a building, right? A mess hall, a pavilion would be fairly easy, which is a covered area with a fire pit or a fireplace for outdoor cooking and gathering. Private housing will be for faculty, staff, and VIP investors and donators. Housing could be primary or secondary place of residence. So the question, how much infrastructure needs to be in place to begin operation, including seminars, retreats, conferences, tours, classes, workshops? Obviously, each tract of land is unique and must be treated as such. Some properties already have some infrastructure in place, and some are just raw pieces of land. And obviously, the raw pieces of land generally tend to be cheaper than places if there's already houses or roads or anything like that going into it. So then I just broke down various scales. We don't need to spend a lot of time on this for right now, but I just took 144 acres, 648 acres, and 1,296 acres. We just start with the smaller one. 144 acres, 18 to 24 acres private residential, 20 to 30 campus infrastructure, 42 to 50 acres undeveloped, trails, campsites, permaculture, agricultural, silviculture. This breakdown, of course, is only for the purpose of starting a discussion. Every potential site or real estate tract is going to have unique properties, features, topography, distribution of resources, access to water, prevailing wind direction, solar access, timber, game, or other resources that must be factored in the planning process. And this was pre-COVID, so these costs probably need to be raised by 15 or 20%. But I went through and did cost estimates for a lot of the infrastructure that would be needed. You can see I started with a lodge restaurant building, $2 to $3 million. I would probably change that to $3 to $4 million now.
Yeah.
Auditorium, theater, classrooms, 2.5. A workshop could be pretty simple. Part of the, is what is access to power? Do we bring something in and connect to the grid, which I'd be totally okay with initially, but of course, ultimately what we would want to be able to do is function autonomously in case the grid went down. Mm-hmm. But while the grid's fully intact, there's no reason not to utilize it. The library basically is a good air-conditioned space. $250,000 I put in for that because I've looked at what have Rona and I built for $250,000. Might want to go more than that, and then I've allocated how much land area to each of those. A laboratory, got to have a laboratory. We'll talk about what would be in that laboratory, but not now. Your greenhouse, rejuvenation clinic, I have nothing there because I didn't know how to. I could certainly price the building of the construction of the building itself. What equipment would you have in there? I'm not in a position to price that now. But a little bit of research, yeah, we could find. I'd probably call my friend Dr. Wishman and say, if I was to provide you, or we were to provide you with a building, and I said you could create your dream rejuvenation clinic, what would you want? What would you need? Cabins, roughly 800 square feet each, about 1 acre per cabin. Really wouldn't need that. Could do half acre. That would be more than the combined property that me and Rowan have here is about a half acre. And if you go out and look at his house up there, there's plenty of space here between us. So
yeah.
The observatory, we'll come back to that. Why 10 acres? Well, 10 acres is because the observatory needs to be removed from the main infrastructure because you want to minimize light. So in my fantasy, we've got, like if we're doing a retreat, we've got like a master switch. We can turn all the lights off.
Yeah.
And get total darkness, for the observatory.
That would be very cool.
Yes. Planetarium.
So in that, you say 10 acres for that just so there's a lot of space and clearing around it?
Correct.
When you're observing sites, have you looked at, I forget what it's called, but there's this tool online that shows you how dark places get?
Yes. And some of the areas we're looking at in Tennessee are pretty well rated. Yeah.
Very cool.
Up on the Cumberland Plateau there's some pretty dark areas. Gardens and crops, gymnasium, green space undeveloped, 100 plus acres, private home site 25 to 30 acres. And really a half acre, if you go out and look at this property, combined mine and Rowan's property, I mean, plenty of space, really. I mean, you could have a house, you have plenty of garden space, and you could have a buffer, enough of a buffer zone. But, that's subject to, whatever. So over there, ballpark estimates for various components of the comprehensive project. Additional notes, initial structures would include 2 multi-purpose buildings that could later be converted to a specific use, such as a library or shop building. Campsites would be developed and some cabins would be built early in the process. A dormitory and mess hall and pavilion would be early in the process. Private home sites will be for staff, faculty, and top-tier patrons. Not costed yet. Road development, water management facilities, power access or generation. Okay. Here's ideas how we could raise money, how the place could support itself.
Oh, yeah.
So let's take a look at it. I guess we'll start at the top up there. In-house retreats, workshops, classes, seminars, online courses, using online to raise revenue.
Yep.
Right?
And that can be even pre-built.
That can be pre-built, yes. I'm anticipating it would be pre-built.
Yeah, probably by the time this comes out, we'll have something in place that people will be able to donate to or contribute to, get access to online courses.
Yeah. Facility rentals, restaurant. Could, and Ian has said, hey, if you do this, I'd like to come up and do Son of Wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
everybody from your community, the network you've built up over years and years contributing to this.
Yeah. Product sales, cottage industry coming around, tours and field courses, and then podcasts, documentary film production, publishing.
Yeah, and we talked about this last time we looked at this too, but it's also like people who want to do research and use the lab as well as funding, allowing research to come in and funding it to some extent, or at least giving access for revenue share, some type of equity, some type of profit from it.
Yes. Love it. Yes. Okay. We won't get into this too much right now because this is a whole discussion in itself. But again, as it says here, the primary focus would be education. To this end, I've got in quotes, association, whatever form or structure it takes, will ultimately seek to establish a network of regional schools and facilities, with the first venture serving as a prototype that can be adapted to other environments. An important part of it. This wouldn't be an isolated thing that we're doing. This would actually be part of, we bring people in, people come and attend conferences to learn how we're doing it here. Take that back, and this is sort of, in a way, this goes back to, my studies of the Middle Ages during the guilds of craft builders and master builders who, the term journeyman, where you had this network of these schools, and you had the journeyman, you would get to a certain level of education, and you'd go out anywhere from a year, a few years, maybe up to 7 years. And you're visiting all of these other lodges and you're exchanging knowledge and information. And then you eventually come back to your home lodge with all of this acquired knowledge, and you've shared it amongst all these groups. And this was something I think that preceded this amazing flowering of the Gothic cathedral movement, right? The Templars did something very similar in a way. They created these networks. And I would think that this would be something that would evolve naturally, because everywhere I've gone, I encounter the same sentiment, which is that, we absolutely need alternatives. And, something you might do in the Southwest wouldn't look like necessarily something you do in the southeast. The basic template could be the same, but the full outer expression, of course, it's going to be integrated into the natural environment. But I also feel like the cultural environment. So if you're in the southwest, you might build in some ways to harmonize with the pre-existing Puebloan culture that has lived there and occupied that land, right? You would draw inspiration from them. So it would be uniquely designed around both the cultural heritage and the natural heritage. Southeast, same thing. You would use, you've got a different environment. Southwest, you've got an arid environment. Here you've got 40, 50 inches of rainfall per year. You've got heavily forests. You've got the Cherokee culture. You've got the Choctaw culture. You've got the mountain culture, right? That's been around for centuries now. And so, you come to an event at a southeastern facility, hell, you might have a Saturday night concert of bluegrass music, right? Mountain music. So the schools will provide a basis for studying and reconnecting with geocosmic regions. Each campus will be a self-supporting but interlinked unit within a larger infrastructure matrix designed to connect each biogeographic, and demographic region. Each school or center will be designed in harmony with its geographic, climatic, and cultural environment. Will provide prototypes for living successfully on planet Earth. So, let's continue on here. Some just additional notes. A trail system. Be cool to have a labyrinth or a maze.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it? Tree houses. An RV park. The Templar Knights established their safe houses on a lattice of interlinked nodes that were typically separated by the distance which a knight could travel by horseback in one day. Nodes of the Sanctuary Project would be spaced so that they are reachable by car in one day's driving time.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Between each location,
yes.
You just have an easy pathway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, here are some examples of retreat conference centers that I have personally experienced either participating in or conducting retreats, conferences, etc. Each one is unique and provides a different set of preferences, opportunities, pros and cons, and so on. I've also included some that I've not personally experienced but could be models for an effective facility. Each example is intended to serve as a source of ideas and or inspiration. So I've attended two conferences at this Dunroven Christian Brothers Retreat Center, which is right up on the St. Croix River, which is the border between Minnesota and Wisconsin. And it's really nice. It was a great place. If you look up here in this, let's see, I think, okay, no, let's go. So they've got a main meeting area here, which is this area. And then you almost see this is a motel. It's all one building. This is almost like a motel type structure. Oh, wow. So we were over 100. I attended two Midwest Masonic conferences here. And I think there was, 60, 75 brothers attending. So there was enough accommodations for all of the attendees to stay here.
Wow.
Yeah. And then you had, on the breaks, you could go out, you could swim, you could paddle canoes. I think next door there was a horse farm if you wanted to go over there. Here's another picture of the thing here. And it says, at Dunroven, we believe clean surroundings give you peace. At Dunroven, we want to meet your needs. At Dunroven, we provide hearty, wholesome, home-cooked meals.
So healthy, spacious, accommodating.
What does that say? Put your toes
in the St. Croix River.
In the St. Croix River. You don't want to do more than your toes because of the crocodiles.
There's crocodiles in Wisconsin?
No, there's no crocodiles.
I didn't think so.
No crocodiles, Beckett. I was just testing your gullibility.
I'm trying to trust you, Randall, and believe you.
See the stars at night, roast a marshmallow because, they have a nice big fire pit outside where people gather at night. What does the next say? Cross-country ski, read by the fireplace. So yeah, it's a very nice place. It's low key. It's run by these Christians. But it was a very nice place, very pleasant place to have this retreat. So I did the retreat 2 years in a row. The third year I would have done it, but then we had COVID. And this is the one at the Crestone Mountain Zen Center, which used to be the Lindisfarne. And I did this 8-day retreat out there. That's the Sangre de Cristo Mountains with Keith Critchlow, one of the masters of sacred geometry. And some of the things I really liked, some of the things not so much. I mean, this was the dining area. I mean, you basically, everybody, the attendees, and there was about 100 people at this retreat. So we all sat at this table and they would come by and serve you the food that they had prepared. It worked, but, and then some of the rooms they had for rent. But this is where me and my two buddies, they had campsites set. And then this domed building was designed by Keith Critchlow, and it had extremely resonant acoustics in it, right? And it was designed, I'd like to get original plans of this, although I have some interesting stuff on acoustical design and how they used to do design like the whispering spaces, whispering galleries and stuff. That was kind of what went into this. So when you walked in this door here, you were in this space here. And so this week that we were here, we had a woman who was a medieval musicologist. And she, of the 100 or so people that were there, she would take a groups of like 10 or 12. We would go in, and then she would teach us part of this Gregorian chant. And then, so every day we would go in, and she would, throughout the day, the different groups would, break away from whatever they were doing, go into the dome. She would teach this part of the Gregorian chant. And then on the last day, everybody gathered, they're all sitting around this circle here. Everybody gathered, and then we put all of the separate parts together. And I swear to God, it was unbelievable. You could almost imagine that angels would have been descending from this skylight. And ever since then, I thought, my God, what an experience that was. And this is the kind of thing I would like to try to replicate.
It's a beautiful space.
Yeah, inside view of the acoustic meditation dome at the Crestone Mountain Zen Center, designed by Keith Critchlow. Extraordinary, transformative experiences took place within this dome. It is not only the unique architecture of the dome space, but also the processes taking place within that together affect the transmutative power.
Have you ever heard of integration?
Heard of what?
Mojave Desert. Integration. INTEGRATRON.
No, I don't.
Just like that. It's famous for recording artists going there and recording.
Oh, I think I've heard of that.
And people say it has healing powers. People have gone there and been healed of ailments because of the resonance.
Well, I believe it because I just remember this. Looking around at people, and there's people that are just like tears coming down their cheeks because they're so overwhelmed with the beauty of it. And I did 5 lectures at the Warren Wilson College, and it's an agricultural college. So on their campus, they have, farm facilities. This is sort of almost like my ideal prototype of the kind of setting you would be trying to achieve.
Yeah. Is this taken from a drone or is this up a mountain?
I think it's probably from a drone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as it says here, there's note the mosaic of open field and meadow intermingled with wooded areas is one of the things that makes it so nice. This pastoral effect.
It's beautiful.
And here were a couple more. I didn't attend these. I just put them as 2 interesting possibilities. Something similar to the Baca campus up here for a Western environment, such as Arizona or southwestern Colorado. And this is pretty much, you would be building this like out of adobe. You would be using, like Arcosanti, they call it desert crete. And right where the building is taking shape, the material that makes the building is taken right from the site of the building. And they create their own type of concrete out of it. They call it desert-crete. The Sri Aurobindo Learning Center. So this Savitri House. Just ideas. There's a lot of interesting ideas to explore out there. Back to Warren Wilson College. So this was the building where we had all the conferences in here. This was accommodation, so I actually stayed in that end right where the two windows are. If you look close, you'll see me in the window. I'm waving. No, not really, but I did. That's the room I stayed in. So, they had a facility. They're very nice for people to stay. There was 3 or 4 lecturers for the weekend, this particular weekend, and then also people attending. Yeah, I gave a series of 5 lecture presentations at Warren Wilson College in 1996. I found the campus nestled in the Southern Appalachians to be especially inspirational and conducive to learning, and have held it up as a prototype since then. So, reintegration with the cosmos entails immersing oneself into the cosmic cycles that govern the rhythms of our individual lives, as well as the planetary system of which we are an integral part. A primary requirement to effect this immersion is access to an open expanse with visibility of the heavens and horizon. And you can see here, I believe this is a sunset, but this was all these ancient cultures, all over every continent except Antarctica. You find this orientation to these cosmic alignments. It could be the sun, the positions of the sun at solstice and equinoxes. It could be the positions of the moon throughout its 18.6-year cycle. It could be rising of auspicious stars like the Dog Star or Regulus, or it could be the Pleiades. But the idea is that something that's become severed that we've lost, and we need to regain it, which is this integration of our cosmos, of our consciousness with the cosmic domain at large. I mean, people living in an urban environment never see the Milky Way. They have no clue. Rowan and I have actually been like flabbergasted sometimes when we're talking to a potential client. And, we're trying to get some information. Yeah, we want to do this or that to our house, and I'm thinking, okay, trying to picture the orientation of the house. I say, okay, when you walk out your front door, which way are you facing? She says, well, we want to build a new master bedroom, or we want to build a Florida room on this side of our house. Oh, okay, Florida room. Well, obviously you need to know where the sun is for that, right? I say, when you walk out your front door, which way are you facing? I don't know. How long you been living there? 20 years? And I don't say this, but I'm thinking, wait a minute, you've lived there 10 years, 15, 20 years. You don't even know which way you're facing when you walk out your front door? This is a problem, people. See, because think about our ancestors living under the stars. The stars, when you grow up, you're in the country, when you're out in a place like we're talking about here, the stars are right there.
It's special. It's something different.
Yes, and you're going to see that that's more important than simply for the experience of being able to understand the night sky. There's actually an effect of being out in the natural world and being attuned to the rhythms of the seasons and so on. Oh. So, examples of meeting classrooms at various retreats and conference centers, from grand to simple.
Mm-hmm.
Simple could get various functions and activities underway if startup capital is limited. I'm starting to think more now, like, let's think that startup capital is going to be more than ample.
Yeah.
And so we can do something like...
On the top right.
Yeah. Although, this is okay, too. I mean, here, you it looks like you could have 150 people in there. You
still need breakout rooms.
You still need some breakout rooms. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and the bottom 2 are perfect for that.
Yeah. Then unique lodging for guests, students, and program participants. So I remember Rob Reinhardt, when we were talking, he said, well, are you open to the idea, or would you be okay with like having some hobbit houses?
Yeah.
And I said, well, yeah. And then I showed him the slide and, yeah, what do you think here? What is this? Tree houses. So here's a tree house I designed. And this is a design that basically does not bolt into the tree itself. So you've got two beams, horizontal beams, that basically, if this is your tree, you've got a beam on either side, and then you've got through bolts that you can tighten as you need to. So you're not boring into the tree itself.
So it's just, you can just essentially clamp the beams.
It's like a clamp.
That.
Yeah, you clamp it. And then, I was thinking, do something really cool.
Yeah.
So that's all inlaid.
Is that
that's
the
like
roof,
this.
or is that inside?
That's the floor of the
floor.
inside. And so, it's like this.
That's
Treehouse
amazing
floor plan with
structures.
inlaid wood floors, exterior deck and stairs, floor design based upon the principles of sacred geometry. Now, that might be a little elaborate at the beginning, but it's something you could come back later and do. You put down a nice, good furniture grade plywood subfloor. Then later on, if you want, you come in and you do something like you make it a class project.
Yeah.
See?
This would be a
you
wonderful
go in the shop,
treehouse.
you pre-cut all of the pieces, you bring it in, you draw out the template on the floor, and then you assemble the thing. And essentially it would be the same process that Ron and the guys did on the table here, except it would be a floor. Then there'd be an outside deck. Then, years ago, Ron and I built a teepee. We never stayed in it, but it was fun building it. We never stayed in it because we left the property. This is when we had 8 acres in northern Minnesota. But I thought, hey, if we're, say in Tennessee, we get with some Cherokee and we tell them, hey, we got a budget here. We want to get you guys to help us design and build these authentic teepees that people could stay in. And this is actually a place where they've done that. So you can like rent this for a night and stay in a teepee.
That's cool.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah, I've never stayed in a teepee before. I'd be interested in it.
Yeah. 5 Georgia state parks that offer yurt camping. So examples of lodging options. A motel type structure saves on building and maintenance costs over the construction of freestanding cabins, but lacks the same privacy. However, this would, in many circumstances, be perfectly acceptable, especially since the cost of room rental in an attached style would be less than that of freestanding cabins, for obvious reasons. You can enclose more space doing this, where they're all adjoined. You're less walls. Your systems, whatever plumbing, can run throughout. You could have one big water main coming in, one main power source coming in with sub panels throughout. So there are economies that can be achieved by doing this type of a structure, is what I'm saying here. And then freestanding cabins, from humble to impressive. You can see down here, humble.
Yeah.
But then you can also see impressive.
Yeah.
So something like this would probably be $600, $700, $800 a night. This might be $75 a night.
Yeah.
But have a range, have options. Because, if young people come in and want to do something and they're already plunking down the fee for the weekend or the workshop or whatever, yeah, that's fine. But if you get some retired couple, wealthy, they're probably not going to want to stay in here. They're going to want to stay in something like this. Or you have like a family that's coming in, or a group. Because something like on this scale, you've probably got 3, 4, 5 bedrooms in there with 2 or 3 baths. And then the Grand Lodge building, the crown jewel of the Kosmogonia campus. Examples of exteriors, post and beam framing. And now one of the big benefits of Tennessee in the area we've been looking at, there's a very well-established Amish community, and they are masters of this type of construction.
Post and beam framing? Is that
Yep.
what it's called?
Yeah, that's what it's called, this timber framing.
Yeah.
And this would be like typical interiors.
Ooh, yeah. I like that one in the bottom right.
Yeah, this one,
Yeah.
isn't that nice?
They're
Yeah.
all cool.
Amenities and activities for guests and students. So we've got plenty of white water in the southeast. We've got plenty of flat water for canoeing. Oh, by the way, in the tour we're going to be doing in the Bonneville, we've got one sort of free day, and Cody who lives out there, he's organizing. So we're going to have canoes and kayaking one day.
Ah, that'll be really cool.
It's going to be cool, yeah. Fishing, horseback riding. Got to have things around there for people to do, and not necessarily that would be something that would be in-house, but we would perhaps partner with somebody. Like, we're going to bring you, 50 people, and we want to do some whitewater rafting.
Yeah, lots of hiking and trails.
Lots
as
of
well.
hiking, outdoor stuff, yeah. So here's ideas for programs and curriculum or activities. So a school of alternative and experimental architecture, energy, plasma technology. Sacred Geometry Master Course with applications in design, art, crafts, music, etc. Archaeoastronomy programs, linking of heaven and earth after the archaic traditions. Geocosmic research includes geological, archaeological, and astronomical programs. Outdoor skills, camping, foraging, stellar navigation, fishing, hunting. Permaculture, aquaculture, regenerative agriculture programs. When we did that weekend, Julie and I and Mike Robertson and John Arthur, we went down and stayed for 3 days at White Oaks Pastures and got the full tour of the place, and then healing arts, rejuvenation. And then, like I say here, what would set this organization apart from all others will be its unique curriculum and the caliber of its programs.
That would be a very fun school to go to.
Wouldn't that
These are your courses. Yeah.
I think I've been a little bit more engaged in
Yeah.
school if this is my curriculum.
Yeah. You'd walk out as a whole person, or at least you'd have a full balance.
So then the first two pieces of property I really looked at 5, 6, 7 years ago when I was doing this had barns on them. And the barns were still relatively in good shape. So I thought, okay, what could we do with a barn if we went in and retrofitted it? So that's where I kind of came up with this. You can look here, you'll see I've got an octagonal all-purpose building here. Back here, here's the observatory. Right back there. There's a greenhouse here. There's just sort of a layout, and again, here, these are modular, so you could add on relatively efficiently as resources came available. Here would be the main meeting area. You'd have a conference. This was the barn-like structure. You'd have a shop where you could begin, like, for example, all the components that went into this would be prefabbed into shop.
Yeah.
Carried out. Because that's where construction, like Rowan can tell you, I mean, how many times, when you're building and, so it's so dependent on weather. If it rains, or you get your footings dug and then it rains and then you have to get a pump and pump out the footings and, you're trying to avoid that. So really the trend now in construction is prefabrication. Also modular, where you can come up with a system of components where you can pre-make those components and then assemble them into a large variety of different structures.
Yeah, you can order a house on Amazon now.
Yeah. So there's just kind of a barn-like structure. There would be the interior as you're, maybe, let's see, coming in the front door here. No, the back door. Doesn't matter. And you've got a mezzanine around the top with workstations, and this would be the library. On the bottom, you'd have, the tables and the chairs and whatever you needed to conduct a class or a workshop. And then looking at it from the other direction, you would have an attached wing that's basically a kitchen.
Cool.
With a pass-through window. and you could serve people food. It's relatively primitive, but it would work initially.
Especially if there's already a barn structure on the.
Yeah, yeah. And then right up here, this would be my workstation, and that could be yours, Beckett, over here.
Thank you, Randall.
Um,
Beautiful view. I can already.
well, that's the whole point, yeah. And then out those doors, you go out, and there's a nice deck, of course, where we go out there and eat our lunch or whatever.
Yeah, eat our lunch, smoke our Cuban cigars.
Yeah, so exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And then up here, you can see the shelves all around. I've got books on. And then you got in workstation. So people doing research would have access to all of this library. And then nearby, you'd have a loading dock. You'd have, here's your shop with front and rear entrances. So you could literally like drive through, load, unload. It doesn't need to be this close, obviously, but so rear view with shop building for the prefabrication of building components and other uses. And then this was part of my inspiration. This is the Philosophical Research, Manly Palmer Hall. That's their library out in LA.
Oh, wow.
And I liked and I had come up with the idea of doing a mezzanine before I actually saw this, but this is really nice what they've got here.
Have you been there?
No, I haven't. Pavilions, this is nice because how many times have we done tours, Roan, where it's raining and we've been able to utilize our pavilion?
Yeah, I'm not sure we did. It was raining and we had a lecture in the pavilion.
Yeah, we did, didn't we? Yeah.
In Beersheba?
Yeah.
It wasn't at Beersheba. Oh, the pavilion? Was it Beersheba?
No, it was the Beersheba, the last geologic Beersheba tour. From Beersheba.
But yeah, we were out somewhere and it started raining and I think, it was at the site we were at. It was at the site we were at. So yeah, it was nice big pavilion, something like this. So, you can, if you've got a fireplace, you build a nice fire. If you've got a program in the fall or early spring and it's chilly, you build a nice fire. If it's raining, you can gather under it. There's different ways, different iterations that you can use. And a property recently for sale in the Cumberland Plateau, Valley and Ridge region of East Central Tennessee. The open land would allow sky visibility for placement of an observatory and archaeoastronomy programs. The rolling hilly topography increases the likelihood of springs, creeks, and streams. Streams with flowing water create the potential for micro-hydro power installations. North Georgia near Ellijay, which is not far from here. The lodge at Deer Crest near Blue Ridge. I like that place.
Looks nice.
And then some maps, region of interest, Cumberland Plateau here, of eastern Tennessee, northeast Alabama, Blue Ridge Mountains of western North Carolina, North Georgia. So it includes Chattanooga, which is right in here, Tennessee River, which is this coming through here, Sequatchie Valley, which is all of this down here. Many lakes, creeks, rivers, and waterfalls, geologic natural features, outdoor activities, and available land. Whoops. Sequatchie Valley. This is the Grand Valley, the Valley and Ridge Province, which is an amazing geological feature, which was, I'm convinced, carried huge amounts of glacial meltwater from all the way up near Pennsylvania and New England.
Oh, wow.
Down south here. Programs and activities. So School of Alternative and Experimental Architecture. This is where I'm expanding on some of these things. An apprenticeship program would be awesome. Which I haven't really developed these ideas yet, but practical solutions. For this project to succeed, idealism must be tempered with pragmatism. Here are some potential systems and technologies that could range from useful to vital. I'm interested in the biomass systems where you can turn this biochar into usable power. Introducing the latest power palette, biomass-powered genset. Uh,
The new PP30.
yeah. This is our most advanced power pallet ever, achieving an unprecedented 80% maximum efficiency. That's pretty damn good. Now, this company, this guy, Jeff Wise, he contacted us a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And this is showing a cross-section of how the system works. We don't need to get into that right now. But he said, hoping to connect these entities, I study Hancock and Carlson's work and represent APL, which is All Power Labs. We also have 2 submarines.
Just casually drops that in there.
Yeah.
They're off the coast of Russia at the moment, but they'll be back for the Kosmogonia development.
So he says we need a conversation about agronomy, climate, energy, subarchaeology. Now, as much as possible, if we find people who are doing things like this, they're already into this and fans and stuff, that's obviously who we want to work for or with. Yeah.
And are you seeing these as technologies that would help in the development of Kosmogonia, or are you saying them as things you'd want to push forward at Kosmogonia?
Well, again, I would have to do more research to see at what stage something like this would come in. But obviously, at some point, we need to be looking at things like this. Like this basically is a way of recycling biomass.
Right.
And then, back up. Portable sawmill would be an indispensable tool where timber would be harvested. Because any tree that was cut down, we would mill it, season it, and we would use it for construction.
Yeah, you'd have to have an air shed
An air shed, yeah.
for drying the home.
Yes. A bandsaw technology has existed for several decades, but has become increasingly popular over the past 5 years. It allows for trees to be turned into quality lumber without a large investment. A single person can operate the mill, and the equipment is easy to maintain. Small mills allow for environmental improvement to forests and a source of affordable lumber to those willing to roll up their sleeves and get to work. You hear that, Trent? Willing to roll up their sleeves and get to work.
That's the man who will do it right there.
Okay, good. And then there's all these new experimental things that would be fun.
Building with straw bales.
Straw bales, yes. The mud house comeback. I like that.
That's very cool.
Yeah. Look at this. Hobbit houses here. Unique possibilities. You like hobbit houses?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
Unique.
Yeah. Experimental design, fuller dome structures. These are just examples of things people are doing. There you go, a hobbit house.
Yeah, it'd be really cool to have people bring their ideas together, so it's also a creative expression.
Sure.
And the architecture is exciting, and the places are inspirational.
Yep. Geodesic structures can be adapted to a variety of uses: greenhouse, spa, pavilion, planetarium. Because for a planetarium, you have to have a dome.
Mm-hmm.
And here, constructing 2 Buckminster Fuller geodesic domes for a yoga retreat in northern Minnesota, summer 1972. Randall Carlson, lead carpenter.
That's him.
See this? See this kid here? Young, skinny kid with hair. Well, yeah, Rowan was lead carpenter. You were what? You were like 17 then? Yeah, so we built these 2 domes up in the North Woods of Minnesota. As it says here, shared creative work, such as displayed here, can forge strong bonds of friendship and alliance. Too many young people are missing experiences like this in their lives. This project involved historical research, design, knowledge of geometry, architecture, construction skills. We'll change this. At the Kosmogonia Institute, all the infrastructure will be designed and built by students and faculty, with the opportunity for students to participate in a work-study format. The shared experience of building is a powerful means of developing community and camaraderie.
Mm-hmm. A community built by the people.
Mm-hmm. We don't need to get into this now, but this is the basis of the master template for a prefabricated modular building system. And then these are some of the, in fact, I'm looking at reaching out and connecting with some of these people that are doing some of these things. I like this is one, the biosome for healthy soil and plants, use anytime and anywhere. This is some of the stuff that they can do with their biosome. So these are another example of somebody that I would like to form an alliance with. Hemp concrete, very useful. It has pros and cons, but every system has pros and cons. What's nice about this is economy and really good insulation value. And as it says here, lasts for centuries. Carbon negative, water and flame resistant, strong, breathable, and light. It can be done with manual labor. And here's just some examples of things that have been done with hempcrete. Kind of cool.
Yeah.
Hempcrete homes. As it says, it's designed to build, not to smoke.
Unless you get somebody who's really a fiend.
Yeah, that
Starts
will be
scraping off the wall.
Well, it's not going to do much for you, I'm afraid. But here, sources, resources, and information. So natural plasters, hempcrete construction, natural building. Silviculture, obviously got to have a silviculture system for a wooded property. It's a planned program of treatments during the whole life of a stand designed to achieve specific stand structural and species composition objectives. The program of treatments integrates specific harvesting, regeneration, and stand tending methods to achieve a predictable yield of benefits from the stand over time. So it's harvesting at the optimum time because, you let trees get too old, they get senescent, and then they become, it's like some of these aging forests that haven't been harvested at all that become we have these really catastrophic fires. So the forest management, there's a place for that. Problem with the American environmentalist system going back to the 70s was it shifted into a hands-off, and that doesn't work.
No.
And now we know Native American peoples all over the continent did controlled burning. And that was necessary for the health of the system. And then more about silviculture, we'll skip over that. Aquaponics has a possibility. There again, pros and cons, but it probably has a place. Resources, permaculture, we like permaculture. An approach to land management and settlement design that adopts arrangements observed in flourishing natural ecosystems. Biodynamic farming. Definitely I've known people that have been into biodynamic farming, and it's in some ways almost miraculous. It's a form of alternative organic agriculture that takes an ecological and ethical approach to farming, food, and gardening. And, we'll probably bring in this guy to get us started.
Who is that guy?
I think that was Rowan when he was younger and before he shaved his beard off. No. Moon gardening, that's actually a thing. But yeah, just for the sake of time, let's wrap this up. Micro hydro power systems. I particularly like this one because it works on the principle of a vortex.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now, wouldn't that be cool?
That's a design utilized when you're just that slower moving water.
Yeah. Because the vortex accelerates the water, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So where's the water flowing into it?
Well, it's flowing in right here.
It's flowing in, and
then it's coming out here. Yeah.
I see. Okay, I wasn't looking on the left. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you, I didn't see on the map, or I don't remember. Do you see ranching being involved in here? Having cattle and...
Oh, yeah, I mean, you could definitely have livestock. It depends on how much room you have. Livestock requires, but if you've got 350 acres, yeah, you could easily put 50 acres, 70 acres to livestock.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be okay. Now, if you're cattle, that's going to be more. I mean, you might want to raise goats. You wouldn't need that much land for goats.
Excuse me, on our last tour, we went and toured the farm at University of the South and got a tour of the whole facilities and the greenhouse and everything. And part of the thing they do is raise goats,
Yeah,
both for shearing and for eating.
Hmm.
And then everything that's raised on the farm and the goats that are raised for food, the students eat in the student cafeteria. So they raise the
Yeah.
food, raise the livestock, and then they eat it.
So I was going to ask about that. Is that you kind of just answered it, but wouldn't that would be required for the fully to be a self-sustaining community?
Oh, yeah.
Some type of livestock.
yeah,
right?
yeah. It would be good. I mean, and in a fully developed permaculture system, there's definitely a role for livestock
Yeah.
and animals.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you'd have chickens. You could have, guinea hens. You could raise, and they can be delicious to eat. You could have, polyculture with fish in it. Remember, what was his name? The guy who had the whole, he moved away, but he had that whole system over there in Cabbage Town.
Yeah.
What was his name? That was certainly interesting what he had going there. Yeah, he had a whole polyculture system set up. And it really was, and yeah, he got a lot of food out of it, including fish. We've done a rainwater harvesting system we've installed, and it's still working from 7, 8, 10 years ago. So that would be a valuable thing to do.
12 to 15 years ago.
Good Lord. I was thinking, God, 2 to 3 years ago. No, it was longer ago than that. So it was 10 years ago, but it was 15 years ago. Anyways, yeah, this would be probably something we'd do throughout on pretty much on every building. Capture the rainwater that's coming off the roof.
Mm-hmm.
There it just shows how a system works. And then you have traditional water harvesting. So if we're on a sloped site, we could put in systems like this. And, for this, it may not be potable water, but it would be perfectly good for using it for irrigation, for gardens, for crops, things like that.
Well, think of all the huge cisterns and everything that have been built over in the Middle East.
Oh, yeah. Well, hell, in the southeast, southwest.
Yeah.
I've been collecting a lot of information on these amazing irrigation systems from, thousands of years ago. Like the Chacoan culture in the Southwest had a huge irrigation infrastructure with aqueducts and canals. Most of it's fallen into ruin and it's become filled in with sediment, but they're now realizing how vast some of these systems were. And then restoration of the ancient Hermetic science of uniting earth and cosmos. Parameters of sacred architectures.
That one just died.
All of these would be part of the system of designing the infrastructure. Symbol, encoding mythical and archetypal meaning, number and measure, the modulus of the plan, which is developed from where on the earth it's being built, orientation, cosmic and astronomical alignments, citing, sacred geography, the association with geological and geomantic structures and patterns, sacred geometry, which would be harmonic design, form, pattern, dynamic symmetry, alchemy, it would be the preparing and processing of the raw materials. So these are things that would actually, we would actually incorporate into the design in the building. And so all the students would be instructed in what all of these mean and how it would work. I think we'll skip some of this, but here's basically the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
From starting with the raw land, begins with the geomantic survey and the location of the sacred center, the erection of the gnomon pole, the establishment of the cardinal and ordinal directions, establishment of the horizon calendar and key astronomical alignments, layout of the celestial template utilizing sacred geometry and metrology, harmonic design and construction of infrastructure to reflect the patterns and motions of the heavens. So what we build down here is a reflection of what's happening out there, because that's a fundamental part of the process of integrating your limited individual consciousness with the consciousness of the greater realm.
Hmm.
And that would be a function of what we would be doing there. Sacred geography and landscape design, the integration of architecture and agriculture, and the amplification of natural forces, which is the outcome of the application of the foregoing principles. And this is the book that our domes were featured in. Yeah. And that came out in 1973. And that was one of the things that first really began to turn me on, because those domes we built up in the Northwoods of Minnesota, they were featured in this book here.
There's some pretty incredible structures on that cover.
Yeah, isn't that an amazing cover?
Yeah.
So then, let's wrap this up here. Parameters of sacred architecture. We have skipped that. The sacred center, the ancient art of locating sanctuaries. So this would be part of the whole the design process. We don't just build random things on the site.
Yeah.
Archaeoastronomy, the linking of heaven and earth, the goal of all ancient sacred building. Archaeoastronomy. I can go through all of this, but you get the idea.
Yeah. Alignment with the cosmos.
Yep. Dowsing for metallic veins while miners mark out the vein by deriving. So this is part of the geomantic survey.
Mm-hmm. Dowsing is super interesting.
Isn't it, though?
Yeah, we were in the Dodge City, Kansas. And there was in one of the museums that we were in, essentially they had like a dowsing exhibit, and they had all of these what are they called? The copper
swing rods.
Swing rods, yeah.
Yeah.
And they were just essentially trying to get you to find clues with
Really?
intention and dowsing. It was super interesting.
It is super. Rowan is successfully dowsed.
For water, or what were you looking for?
Water, and used it mainly before we excavate for like an addition or something. Douse for any gas or water lines or water springs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting how that works.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah. And this is just some history. Very interesting stuff. So, astronomical observatory. You can actually buy these dome kits, and they're relatively affordable. But what you have to do is build a nice, good foundation, and you need a nice, big, solid slab of concrete, because your telescope can't have any vibration in it. I mean, if you're looking at some star, there's even the littlest bit of vibration. So you got to build a nice, solid foundation with a big foundation slab that your telescope can be bolted to.
With the computer.
With the computer, yeah. And you can buy these as kits. So this is not something that would be prohibitively expensive. It could actually be created early on in the process. Got to have some things. This was like the major Renaissance. This was like how Kepler and Galileo and Newton was able to orient themselves to the cosmos, an armillary sphere.
Huh.
And it kind of, in a sundial, kind of connects us back with that era, from 300 years, 400 years ago. So I think, having like a common area kind of with a landscaped garden with some things like this would help to create an atmosphere of where we're kind of like trying to reconnect with that era of the scientific enlightenment. And then planetarium and dome and projection system. Eventually, it says a planetarium would be an awe-inspiring, what does it say, addition? Oh, yeah, to the programs and presentations at the center. And then this just some of the software that's out there now.
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine having something like this? And you do these shows, then you go out into the actual night and look at the sky. And I tell you, it's almost enough to make you cry.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think we'll end it here. This is very interesting stuff. We'll end it with this seed of knowledge, stone of plenty. And This is why we want to use the ancient principles right here. So this is from a book, Seed of Knowledge, Stone of Plenty, right? So here you have a group of seedlings of Mayan corn, 11 days old, germinated in a hotel room at Tikal. Now here's the pyramid, the ancient pyramid of Tikal. They took from the same crop of Mayan corn and 11 days old, but this was germinated after being placed on top of the Lost World Pyramid, which is this. Tikal on a morning with powerful electrical activity. Look at the difference. Look at the next one. This is astonishing practical results of the ancient system. Oops. So the top row, you have Iroquois blue flint corn right here. It's the control sample harvested from 40 seeds treated under ordinary conditions, while the lower two rows were harvested from 40 seeds placed inside an ancient rock chamber in the Ninham Mountain State Park in New York for 75 minutes prior to planting. The chamber is located over a magnetic anomaly. The treated seeds produced 3 times as much corn as the untreated.
Pretty practical.
Now, this is part of, I think, a technology that, and what the effects that they're getting here, I think, are just the residual effects, because it's not really even operational anymore. In the interest of full disclosure, Randall says, the secret of the ancient technology is to be found in the resonance between earth and sky and its amplification through utilization of suitable structures, properly aligned to the movement of the heavens, strategically placed within the electro-geomagnetic field according to the crystalline pattern of the regional bedrock and fault lines. So any site, we would do a geological survey. We would get geological maps. We would locate all of the fractures, all of the fault lines, the subterranean waters. That would be all part of the geomantic survey. That would be like the first thing you do once we've acquired the land. Tecton, using ancient principles in renovations. That's me there. This was a feature article that was done on this company that we were with. This is 1980.
Wow.
So a feature article from 1980 demonstrating that Randall has been studying these principles for a long effing time. So this is 45 years ago.
Holy shit.
So we were building this thing for this guy in his house, a special room.
Cool. Redesign, what was it? Buckhead what? Buckhead Residence. Gotcha.
Yeah, Buckhead Residence. So historical roots, 8-day yoga retreat, summer 1972, northern Minnesota. Recognize that guy?
That's you?
That's Rowan.
Oh, that's Rowan.
Meal preparation and serving for about 100 people. Rowan, far left,
Oh, yeah.
stirs a large pot of oatmeal. And Rowan he's really become quite an accomplished oatmeal stirrer in the years.
Plenty of years of practice.
Okay.
And this was the summer before the retreat where we built the dome.
No, this was that retreat. Oh, well, you might be right.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
yeah.
And this is our good friend, Pete Fetzek. He was one of my best friends from high school. We had a lot of good adventures together. Even without the potent subject matter of the retreat, shared meals in a natural setting, away from the distractions of urban society, are a powerful means of forming a sense of community and fellowship. America, land of liberty, independence, self-reliance, opportunity, enterprise, and unlimited potential. That's the America we want to try to revive. Restoring the original vision of the great American experiment. The next 2 slides depict a world that my grandparents, mine and Rowan's grandparents, and their generation were leaving behind as they were growing up in the early 20th century. It is vitally important to maintain a connection with that world when 3/4 of the American population lived a rural or agricultural existence, still closely connected to the natural order and the rhythmical cycles of the seasons. It was also the time in history that marked the beginning of our journey to the stars.
Mhm.
And this is back that heyday. America, honoring and remembering the world of our forefathers and mothers, reconnecting with our cultural past, which laid the foundation for everything that has come after. So if there's a stream, we should probably have something like this or something like this, right? Just to have that feeling of, you know, how it was back then. In fact, this one here, did you ever see the movie about the moonshiners with Shia LaBeouf? Lawless. You saw that?
Yeah.
So this is the bridge where the climax of that movie took place.
You know why they're covered bridges?
Why?
It increases the lifespan of the bridge.
Oh yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah.
We did a kind of many years ago, 30 years ago probably, we did a Randall and Julie and I did a tour of covered bridges in North Georgia. And there's some incredible
Yeah,
bridges.
yeah, there are.
Just amazing architecture. A lot of them old, you know, that have been around for so darn long just because they were covered.
Yeah. Now that would be an interesting thing, wouldn't it? Go around documenting things like old mills and covered bridges. Wouldn't that be?
Yeah.
I would think that would be very cool.
I think it'd be impactful.
Yeah. So, invoking a bygone era in American history, an era of freedom, self-reliance, and enterprise. In this era of disparaging America, it is more important than ever to support and encourage young people's awareness of and reconnection with the other side of the American vision before it is completely forgotten. And then Randall teaching geometry to a class of homeschool students, 1997.
Awesome picture.
God, was I good looking. It's unbelievable, isn't it? And here's Randall's first hands-on geometry class for young people, 1995. This was the first one. And this was actually the room I rented from
At the church?
Yeah.
These are awesome pictures. You need to send us these.
Over 120 kids tutored in classes over the next 15 years. It is critically important to develop alternatives to the authoritarian, hierarchical, monopolistic system of indoctrination that now usurps the function of authentic education. So this is how I'm teaching math, by getting them to do drawings. So here were three of my homeschool students. We designed this system here. This young man, Mark, had a condition. He's since passed away. Mark McGinnis, and Dan beat all but one of 325 teams of 13,355 public, private, and homeschool students. So I was their coach. So, you know, we did this. We entered the science fair contest and got second place nationally. And here's geology field trip with homeschool students. Getting students out of the classroom into the real world of nature is vitally important to any system of education, promotes the psychological well-being of students. And then, this is where we'll leave it. Scientists discover a major lasting benefit of growing up outside the city. It is only in the last few hundred years that we have moved into cities. And basically the result of it is the idea is that they've discovered now that students that are brought up with exposure to nature and those who aren't, the ones that aren't, on every front, greater amounts of depression, divorce, drug addiction, suicide, all of those factors are greater in students that have had no real connection with the natural world. Whereas students that have had connections with the natural world literally have structural changes in their brain that make them more intelligent, that make them more able to adapt to, circumstances or whatever.
You know, structural changes can start changing within as short of time as a day.
Yes.
If somebody's living in a city and they were to go out, start spending time out in the wilderness or out just in the country, in the open air and everything, they're noticing changes within one day of being out.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
You'd think it's something we'd prioritize as a civilization or a society.
Yeah. Cognitive development in kids. Yes. So it's just, so then I say the proportion of rural to urban dwellers in America has shifted dramatically in the past 3 to 4 generations, creating an imperative need for opportunities for people to reconnect with the natural order. This is especially important for children and young people who will inherit the earth and must become its stewards as the 21st century unfolds. It is the disconnect between people's psyche and the natural world that renders them susceptible to indoctrination and brainwashing. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So I think that's where we'll end it for now. There's a little bit more here.
We've only gone 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Oh, well,
So another 2 hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah.